Alright, hey everyone. Today I'm just going to keep reading the Omega Blade, and next week I will probably have a different video, but we'll see. The Omega Blade, Chapter 2. Dozens of tents had been set up around the 7 arenas. As Val and the others walked back to theirs, they saw members of over a dozen species preparing for their matches. In an open space between a pair of tents, a dwarf man was sparring, unarmed, with a man who appeared to be half elf and half orc. After getting some food, Aaron and Lux went outside to spar. Each wielded a one-handed double-edged sword with a steel blade. Lux's sword was a northern design with a 3-foot blade, and she used it in combination with a wooden shield that was 3.5 feet across, ringed with iron, and had a rounded iron boss protruding from the middle that was a foot long and 6 inches thick. Aaron's sword was a Jian, an Eastern design, and although its blade was 4 inches shorter than Lux's, it was also much lighter. For the sake of safety, both women were using wooden replicas of their swords. Nearby, Valerius and Nephrius were sparring with a halberd and scythe, their respective mid-range weapons, and Leoric was sharpening his broadsword. After ducking under a horizontal slash, Aaron slashed low, aiming for Lux's ankles. Lux jumped over the wooden blade, but she landed awkwardly and stumbled, allowing Aaron to push her off balance. Lux fell, and Aaron held her wooden blade to the Boread woman's neck. Deciding to take a break, Lux began walking around the grounds. As she passed one of the arenas, she heard people cheering. She had just started making her way back to the others when the tent to her left opened and Princess Kion stepped out, wearing a garment similar in appearance to human sundresses. The cut on her cheek was gone, having presumably been healed by one of the clerics. 2 Boread men in metal armor were standing guard on either side of the tent. Kion spoke briefly to one of them, then walked around the side of her tent. She waved her finger, and a chair made of ice formed from the ground up. Only after sitting down did she notice Lux. Stealing her nerves, Lux approached the princess and got down on one knee. "Your Highness," she said in Boreatica. Kion sighed. "I appreciate the sentiment, but there's no need to be so formal. Please, stand." Pleasantly surprised, Lux rose to her feet. "What's your name?" Kion asked. "Luxia," Lux replied. "You can call me Lux." "Nice to meet you, Lux. You can call me Kion." "Oh," Lux blinked. "All right." Kion waved her hand, and a second ice chair formed to the left of hers. "Care to join me?" Lux's surprise only grew. "You're serious?" "Yes." Kion leaned back. "Not including my guards, do you have any idea how long it's been since I met one of our kind outside of the kingdom?" Lux shrugged. 3 years? 2, actually. Please, join me. "Princess, are you sure?" one of the guards asked. "I'm 51, Kion said. "I can take care of myself." Boreads had an average lifespan of around 160 years, so despite her age, Kion didn't look a day over 32 by human standards. As Lux sat down, she couldn't help admiring the princess's body, and not just because Kion was in excellent shape. A sigh of relief escaped Lux's lips as she leaned back against the ice. Although Boreads were perfectly capable of surviving in warm temperatures, they were most comfortable in the cold, so the ice against Lux's skin was like a warm blanket to a human. "You're not going to try to assassinate me, are you?" Kion asked in a casual tone, having switched to the common tongue. "What?" Lux looked at her. "No, of course not." Kion met her gaze. "You're sure?" Lux looked up, indicating that she was thinking. "Well, I mean, for the right price." She let her voice trail off, then burst out laughing. "No, Princess, I wouldn't dream of it." "Good." Kion leaned back. "The right price, eh? So you're a bounty hunter. Close, mercenary. First time in the tournament?" "First time at Emberhaven, yes. Not my first tournament." "Can I ask you a personal question?" Kion asked, sounding nervous and switching back to Boreatica. Intrigued, Lux turned to fully face the princess. "Go ahead," she said, also switching back to Boreatica. Kion closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "The killing," she said, opening her eyes. "Has it gotten easier for you?" Caught off guard, Lux had to take a moment to consider the question. "Wait, have you not? Captain Ironhoof wasn't my first, no. I was just curious." "I suppose so, yes," Lux said slowly. "It's never easy, but it affects me a little less each time." "That hasn't been my experience," Kion said sadly. "Well, give it time," Lux said, touching Kion's arm without thinking. Kion looked down at Lux's hand, but she didn't pull away. "I suppose it would be bad if killing didn't affect us at all," she said, looking at all the people around them. "That's how we lose ourselves to the violence." Lux suddenly felt very tempted to take Kion's hand in hers, but she decided against it. Glancing around, she noticed her friends approaching with their weapons. "There you are," Val said, jogging ahead of the others. Lux sat up. Princess, these are my friends. Valerius, Aaron, Laric, and Nephrius. Everyone, this is Princess Kion. The four of them exchanged greetings with the princess. My fight got moved up, Aaron said. We've got about 10 minutes to get to the arena. You coming? Yes, of course. Lux stood up, then turned to face Kion. It was an honor, princess, she said, switching to Boreatica. Kion nodded. For me as well. They made their way to Arena 7, where they found a pale-skinned half-elf arguing with a pair of dark-skinned human mages, one man and one woman. The half-elf man had a bronze shield strapped to his left forearm, and the female mage was holding a single-edged short sword with a forward curve in the blade. Spotting Aaron, the male mage walked over to her. You're Aaron? He asked. She nodded. I am. Very good. He held out his hands. Your weapons, please. Why? Aaron asked, confused. They were checked when I arrived last night. We're aware, the mage said. We just need to make sure that whoever let you in didn't miss anything. Behind him, the half-elf's argument with the female mage was escalating, with him getting increasingly agitated while she tried to defuse the situation. I don't care what some stupid bastard did 5 years ago, the half-elf shouted. The enchantment only affects the blade itself, not the world around it. I understand that, she said calmly. Has it ever occurred to you what might happen if the blade becomes too sharp? The damage it could do to reality itself? Furrowing his brow, he tried to take the sword from her, only to be frozen in place by a wave of her hand. Arcadius, I'm disqualifying him, she told her male counterpart. Any objection? Arcadius shook his head. Alright, then I'm taking the sword to have the enchantment removed. While she used magic to make the frozen half-elf follow her, Arcadius turned back to Aaron. The sword was enchanted with inverted wear and tear, he explained. Apparently the mages who checked him forgot that all enchantments that affect the flow of time in any way are banned with no exceptions. Whoever enchanted it in the first place clearly didn't think about the potential consequence of a sword that gets sharper with use. Oh, she blinked. So, what now? Well, he was meant to be your opponent, but he refused to let us disenchant his sword or use a different weapon, so he's out. I need to check your weapons, and if you follow the rules, then you win by default. Oh! Aaron's heart fell a little. Alright. You sound disappointed. I was looking forward to a challenge. Well, unless none of your opponents are a match for you, you'll get one. Just not yet. Aaron shook her head. No, I know, I just get restless. I haven't had a real fight in almost 3 weeks. You'll have your chance. Arcadius pulled out a scroll. Until then, would you happen to know where I can find someone called Valerius Ironshade? Half an hour later, Val stood inside a gate at one end of the arena. Ladies and gentlemen, a woman's amplified voice exclaimed. I give you Jag the Vivid! Through the bars of the gate, Val could see an orc man with greenish-gray skin, red eyes, and short brown hair walk out to the cheering and clapping. Just over 6 feet tall, Jag carried a scimitar with a 40-inch curved blade and a rectangular bronze shield the size of a small door. His opponent, Valerius Ironshade! The gate in front of Val opened and he walked out. To his right, an elven woman named Phaethira Ravensense stood at a podium, using the same type of enchanted pendant as Arjun. She was of average height and had long red hair and bluish-white skin. Clad in steel armor that protected his head, chest, arms, and legs, but sacrificed additional coverage for mobility, Val carried the halberd of Proteus. Just over 7 feet long, its axe blade had a wide curved edge, with complex engravings inlaid in silver. The top of the halberd was tipped with an 8-inch spearhead, and opposite the axe blade was a 4-inch curved spike. The copper shaft had a detailed grip, and the entire head was bound to it with a series of slots and teeth. Its enchantment bonded it to its owner, gradually healed their wounds, and prevented the blades from getting dull. However, that enchantment had been temporarily removed. Random selection has determined that each fighter will be allowed one melee weapon of any kind, but no ranged weapons or enchantments, Phaethira said. The requirement for victory will be first blood from the torso. Do you both understand? They both nodded. Very good. Fight! Jag stood his ground, planting his shield as Val advanced on him. He wore no armor except for a helmet, but his shield was big enough for him to fit most of his body behind it. Deciding to test Jag's defenses, Val jabbed at his right arm, one of the few parts of his body not behind the shield. Jag parried the strike with his sword, but Val had been counting on that, and he used his weapon's curved spike to hook the scimitar just above the handle and pull it out of Jag's hand. It slid across the ground, and before it had even stopped moving, Val stabbed Jag's right pec with his halberd's spearhead, piercing just deep enough to draw blood without doing any serious damage. Oh, Phaethira said, mildly surprised. It appears we have a winner. After collecting his prize gold, Val joined his friends in the stands to watch the next fight. Lucky bastard, Leoric said dryly. Tell me about it, Aaron teased. You actually got to fight. Val rolled his eyes and sat down to Aaron's left. Lux, how long until your fight? He inquired. An hour and a half, Lux answered, give or take. Val leaned forward and looked at Nephrius, who was at the opposite end of the group. Hey, Nephrius, he said. You excited? The tiefling nodded. Mostly nervous, but yeah. Look on the bright side. Leoric wrapped an arm around Nephrius. You'll only be facing a single opponent at a time, and that's your strong suit. As they were talking, Phaethira introduced someone named Dyphus, and a male satyr walked out of the left gate. Wearing full bronze armor, he carried a short sword and a bronze shield that was at least 4 feet across. Nephrius raised an eyebrow. Isn't that everyone's strong suit? Actually, no, Aaron said. My cousin Koros specifically trained to take on multiple opponents, to the point that he actually struggled against single opponents. He has a more balanced approach now, but he's lucky it didn't get him killed. His opponent, Tharmand Blackstone, Phaethira exclaimed. Leoric's eyes widened, and he turned to see a male dwarf walking out. Standing exactly 4.5 feet tall, he had fair skin, hazel eyes, short red hair, and a long red beard. He was carrying a double-headed axe that was nearly as tall as he was. Why isn't he wearing armor? Val wondered aloud. You haven't heard of Tharmand Blackstone? Leoric asked. No, should I have? Even I've heard of him, Aaron teased. Apparently his axe's enchantment is either weakened or completely negated if it's used by someone wearing armor. Random selection has allowed that the fighters will be allowed one enchanted weapon of any kind, Phaethira said. The requirements for victory will be death or forfeit. Do you both understand? Both men nodded. Then by all means, fight! Dyphus took a defensive stance as Tharmand approached him. Despite being more than 6 inches shorter than his opponent, Tharmand went on the attack, and Dyphus dodged 2 slashes. Dyphus countered with a quick stab to Tharmand's gut. Yelling in pain, Tharmand raised his axe and brought it down hard. Dyphus raised his shield to block it, but the axe hit with such force that the dent it made broke his left forearm. Dyphus dropped his sword and fell back, screaming in pain. I know that hurts, lad, Tharmand said to his fallen opponent. Hit the ground if you yield. Dyphus immediately slapped the ground with his right hand, and Tharmand was declared the winner. 3 clerics rushed into the arena, with 2 moving to help Dyphus and a 3rd stopping next to Tharmand. So ends Chapter 2. Hope you enjoy. I don't think I'm going to do Chapter 3 next week, but I will do it eventually, for those of you who care. Both of you. That's all for now. Stay safe in these crazy times.